Welcome everybody, welcome to the channel. This week, something a little bit new. Last time, if you guys watched the video, was the box jack-o'-lanterns, where I turned 2 of these boards into 3 jack-o'-lanterns that light up. Now, I'm going to turn these 2 into a 3-piece light up box set. My version has the little fairy lights inside them, with holes drilled in the outside of these boxes, fancy little ribbon on top. And there you go, nice little item. Just 2 boards, makes 3 of them. So let's follow along as I show you how I made my set. So this is a great item to basically build for yourself, or if you want to actually make them and sell them. I've already built a few of them and they're actually selling pretty well. Price point, it'll all depend on your area. Now I sell them as a 3-piece set. Kind of does a little bit better than trying to sell them individual and trying to figure out what size everybody likes. You pick on how you want to make yours. So basically the concept is the same. Depending on whatever size you choose, you go with that. But with mine, I'm basically doing 10-inch, 8-inch, and then 6-inch. So the first step is picking your boards. Now you can use any type of wood you like. You can use pine, you can use cedar, you can use really any kind of wood you want. You get really fancy or just really basic. I chose going back to the cedar. So the first step is basically the prep work. Now, depending on what kind of boards you pick, you might have to do a little extra sanding and prep work. So you can see this one has, you can kind of see it, you can kind of see those little like fuzzy hairs and stuff like that. So you basically want to go through and do your sanding now, or you could actually probably just run them through a planer if you have that. But if you don't, just use your regular sander and then just kind of get the sanding and get them as smooth as possible just for aesthetics to get a jump start. And the reason why you want to sand them now on the big boards, just makes it simpler. You place your board on the ground or on your table and just sand it off. One big piece, flip it, get the other side, and you're good to go. You can do a little bit more sanding later on, especially if you use cedar and potentially pine. When you're drilling the holes out, you might have a lot of tear out. So you want to basically just get everything sanded, a jump start on the sanding, get that done first. Then you'll basically cut all your pieces down, drill your holes, sand the inside a little bit, and then start piecing it all together. So follow along. This was definitely my best upgrade to my table. No heavy lifting, just RV jack, lift it up with a drill, lock it in, we're good to go. Let's rock and roll. Alright, first thing is you try to make a straight cut. Now you'll notice I'm actually using 4 boards right there. The only difference with what you'll be making will be using just 2 boards at a time. I'm making basically 2 sets. So I'm basically trying to utilize my time well and just do 4 boards at a time. But in your case, if you're just making 3, you would make these cuts using 2 boards at a time. After you make your straight cut, you'll want to go ahead and make your 10-inch cuts. So after you do your 10-inch cuts, measure out to set your stop block to make the 8-inch cuts. And as you can see, I'm making the cut, and basically I already have one set right there, another box right there. So I'm just, going with what I had to do. But in your case, right now, you would just make initially 2 cuts at the 10-inch, then you would change your stop block to 8-inch, make those cuts, and then finally make 2 cuts at 6. That'll give you all your pieces. You'll have some board left over, so at that point you would make your stop block at 7 inches. That way you would get basically your tops. So here I'm basically just mocking up what size of the box be based on the thickness of the boards I have to basically get the measurement I need to make the stop block to repeatable cuts at about 7 inches or so. Get those cut down, and then I have a rough estimate of my actual tops. So next you'll want to trim off the rough edges. Depending on what size thickness you chose, mine were just under 6 inches. So the first pass that I'm going through with all my pieces are basically about a 1/4 inch each pass. Once I get all these cut, change the fence to the other side and make my cuts on the other side. And this is totally up to you on the size that you want your boxes and how much you actually trim off. I just try to keep it all fairly even, so pretty much chopping off a 1/4 inch on both sides, a little bit more on some boards because some were a little bit thicker than the other ones. So you basically do what you have. All right, and now we're off to the next step, which is basically drilling in your holes. That was a 3/8 inch Forstner bit. I found that having that gave me the cleanest cut possible. I tried using an actual drill bit, but I was having way too much tear out and it was just sloppy. So right now I'm just basically made the first drill there, and actually made a little tip there is marking off the thickness of how far I actually have to go with the Forstner bit to not go too deep, just enough to break through and not go too crazy in there. So the way I did mine, and it's totally up to you, but on a 10-inch pieces I ended up drilling a total of 10 holes, 5 on each side, and generally kept them to the far right and left of the pieces because the bolt that I'm using is about 2.5 inches, and as you can see with cedar it is horrible with the tear out. Even with a sacrificial piece right there, I was still getting a lot of blowout. So as you will see, just go through bit by bit, try to get your as clean as possible cuts. And on the 8-inch pieces, I decided to go with a total of 8 holes, 4 on each side. Again, drilling towards the sides because I will have a 2.5-inch ribbon running through the middle. Now I ended up seeing that using the drill and just manually just going through and drilling all the holes with a drill was a lot faster than going through and using a drill press. I could be wrong, but you do you, I do me. And on the 6-inch pieces, I ended up going with basically 6 holes, 3 on each side. As you can see, there's a lot of tear out. So your next step is sanding. So obviously you did the sanding previously when they were the long boards, so you at least got one whole side nice and cleaned up. This is all the blowout, so here you're just kind of sanding that down a little bit, smoothing those out, try and get all the little frays out. All right, once everything's pretty much sanded, you will try to arrange all your pieces where it's pretty much rinse and repeat on all your pieces. So again, you will set aside 4 pieces for your next box, and you pick out the better looking side to face the outside and the worst side inside. And again, I put a bead of glue on only one of them and try to not make a mess. And again, place the top piece on top, use the other piece to kind of keep it lined up, so when you are putting the brad nail in, you pretty much have a 90-degree angle. Tackle on 3 brad nails. Once you have everything kind of aligned, put the bead of glue. Trying to line up everything just right. Obviously there'll be a lot of squeeze out because you are tinkering with the alignment. Once you're happy with the alignment, put some brad nails in, clean off any of the excess glue. Flip your box over, add the 2 beads of glue on the top, grab your next piece, make sure you have the right side, and place it on top, getting the best alignment possible, and tack it in with a couple of the brad nails. Whoops. Apparently I totally missed that one. There we go. There it is now. Now get the other side lined up. And again, once that's lined up, tack in the brad nails. Just take your time. Once you get one side aligned, you can kind of play around with the remaining sides Once it's lined up right, tack in your brad nail, and there you go. Clean it up and set it aside. And finally, the 10-inch box. Get your 4 pieces ready to go. Get that lined up. And again, it's rinse and repeat. Same thing. You will be adding glue to just the first one, placing the other piece on top, using the other one as leverage to keep your angle as straight as possible. Tack in the brad nail. Here, definitely you're going to put 3 on each side just to ensure everything is lined up perfectly. And this particular one, I do that later after I get everything kind of glued up, lined up, and then I'll tack in the remaining brad nails in the middle for a little bit of extra stability while that glue actually does set. So this is fairly simple. Rinse and repeat. Obviously I have a few more to go than this, but you can see fairly easy, and right there you're almost done and you have already 3 boxes to go on display in your house, under the tree, on a mantle, fireplace, anywhere you feel like you need some Christmas cheer. And once you have that final measurement of your actual boxes, you could take your tops back to the saw to basically trim down your pieces to fit exactly the top of your box. So once I have the measurements of my boxes, as you can see, I am setting the fence to 5 3/4 to get to one side. So first pass is 5 3/4. Once I make all the cuts, I set it down to 5 1/2. And that's the actual short side final dimensions. Now trimming the long sides, or basically the short side now. First measurement is at 6 3/4. And the final cut will be just over 6 1/2 inches. We'll do the final sanding and we'll get it basically to 6 1/2 to the exact measurement. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, we are at the final stretch here. Once you place the top on your box, get it all nice and lined up. You can see everything looks pretty good. There's that slight little overhang, but that will be fixed once you glue it on top and then do your final sanding. You can kind of smooth out that little difference. As you can see, I have my work cut out, but here we go. For your boxes, you just put a bead of glue all the way around, and then basically you're just putting your top and tack in the brad nail on each corner. You can always add some in the middle, especially if your boards aren't perfectly straight, if you never ran it through your planer. Then you could just add a couple more brad nails on top, especially if you do it in the middle. They will be covered by the ribbon. And then a little cleanup, and basically again rinse and repeat. And we're almost at the final stretch here. Final thing is basically doing a little bit of a sanding to soften the corners and pretty much clean up any of that glue that's still left over. Sand that down. And I'm just basically using 80 grit, between 80 grit and 120, to kind of speed up the process, to kind of clean up those angles, the corners, basically just kind of round them over the best you can, and then eliminate any of that glue squeeze out from your glue ups. Now, one little tip: if you did have some pretty big gaps, easy quick fix is basically grab some of that sawdust that you had from all your sanding originally and mix it with some glue, fill in those gaps, let that set and dry, and then re-sand everything else, and basically those gaps should be pretty much gone, and then you'll have your boxes. Alright, that was basically it. Everything's all glued up, let the glue set. I'm just going to go back and finish up the rest of those boxes, cut up the lids, get them glued up, and next part will be basically getting your bows, and that's all up to you and how you want to do those, whether you're just putting a bow on top with an acorn on top, some branches on top, or in my case, these with the ribbon and bow combo. Only other thing is for these I actually had to paint white because someone requested a set of all white. But you can choose how you want to merchandise them, which will be either doing like one being red, green, and white, do a whole set of white, all set of green, red, or just leave it as the rustic. They should all sell. They all look great in every single version, as you can see. Here's a couple of samples of what I have done. I'm pretty proud of how they worked out, and they're actually selling. So there's one item that you guys can use for the craft fairs for your seasonal items. We obviously transitioned from fall. These are kind of for Christmas. Everyone loves buying Christmas, and these could be items going through year round because a lot of people love to buy Christmas stuff year round. So there you have it. That's my my build with, again, 2 boards. Makes 3 boxes, same theme, but just more Christmassy. So hopefully you enjoy this build and you've seen any tips and tricks that you would like to use yourself, or you've seen a better way of me doing this. Leave a comment down below. I will get back with as many as I can. And until then, I will see you in the next video. Let's go make something.